Hey, friends, welcome back to the Long Way Through Scripture. I'm Catherine Schaefer. This is a slow walk through the Bible. It's not rushed, there's no pressure, just one section at a time, letting it unfold as it does. Each week, we're not trying to master Scripture, we're just learning how to stay with it, just a little longer than we normally would. If you're following along and want something to help you process what you're reading, there is a companion workbook for this podcast. It's simple and steady, just something to help you reflect and stay grounded as you go. You can find it in the show notes, but it's there if you want it, not something you have to keep up with. I'm really glad you're here. So let's begin with week 18, 1 Kings 12 to 22. By the time we reach this part of the story, everything we saw being built in the last section is still standing on the surface. The kingdom is established, the structure is there, the legacy of David and the wisdom of Solomon have already shaped what this nation looks like. And then, almost suddenly, everything begins to fracture. It doesn't start with war, it starts with a conversation. Solomon is gone, and his son Rehoboam steps into leadership. The people come to him not with rebellion, but with a request. They're asking for relief for a lighter burden than what they carried under Solomon's rule. It's a moment that could have gone a different way. Rehoboam listens, but not carefully. He hears the request, but he leans into voices that push him toward control instead of wisdom. What could have been a moment of unity becomes a turning point that breaks the kingdom in two. And just like that, what once stood together is divided. Israel in the north, Judah in the south. There's no long build up to it, no gradual drift over chapters. One decision, one posture, one refusal to lead with humility, and everything changes. And this is where the story begins to feel different than anything we've read so far. Because now, instead of one people moving together, we're watching two kingdoms move in parallel, often in opposition, both carrying the same history, but not the same direction. Jeroboam takes leadership in the northern kingdom, and almost immediately he makes a decision that shapes everything that follows. He creates an alternative system of worship, not necessarily because he rejects God entirely, but because he's trying to maintain control. He doesn't want the people returning to Jerusalem because he knows that where people go to worship shapes where their loyalty rests. So he builds something new, something familiar enough to feel right, but different enough to redirect their focus. And this becomes a pattern, not a complete rejection, but a distortion, not an obvious break, but a redirection. That's what makes this part of the story so important to sit with, because it shows how easily something can look close to right while still leading in the wrong direction. As the chapters continue, the narrative moves between these two kingdoms, and the rhythm becomes noticeable. Kings rise and fall. Some follow God, many don't. Decisions are made that echo forward into the lives of the people they lead. And over time, you begin to feel a kind of instability that wasn't there before. There's no longer a single direction, no longer a shared center. What was once unified now moves in fragments. This is also where the prophets begin to step more clearly into the story. Elijah appears, not as a political leader, not as a king, but as a voice that cuts through everything else that's happening. His presence feels different. He doesn't carry authority because of position. He carries it because he speaks what is true, even when everything around him is moving in another direction. The confrontation on Mount Carmel stands out as one of the clearest moments in this section. It's not just about fire from heaven or a public display. It's about clarity. The people have been living in a space where everything has blended together. Worship, culture, belief. And Elijah brings them to a point where that mixture can't continue. There's a moment where everything is laid bare. Not forced, but undeniable. And for a brief moment, the people respond. But even that doesn't last in the way we might expect. Because the deeper issue isn't just what they say in one moment. It's what direction they continue to walk in after it. Elijah's story also carries something quieter underneath it. After the confrontation, the visible moment of power, he finds himself alone, exhausted, and uncertain. It's a side of the story that doesn't always get as much attention. But it matters because it reminds us that standing in truth doesn't always feel strong. Sometimes it feels isolating or it feels heavy. And even in that, God meets him, not in something overwhelming or forceful, but in a way that is steady, quiet, and personal. As the chapters continue, the instability across both kingdoms becomes more consistent. Leadership doesn't settle. Direction doesn't stabilize. The same patterns repeat. Not because the people haven't seen what happens, but because something deeper is out of alignment. There's also a growing sense that consequences don't always show up immediately. Decisions are made, paths are chosen, and life continues for a while as if nothing has changed. But over time, the weight of those decisions become visible. By the time we reach the end of this section, there's no sense of resolution. There's movement, activity. There are victories and losses. But underneath it all, there's a clear understanding that something foundational has been broken. And the story is now moving forward from that place. As you read through these chapters this week, it may feel faster, more fragmented, harder to follow at times. That's not you missing something. That's the nature of what's happening in the story. Things are no longer moving in one direction, and that's exactly the point. The reflection to carry with you this week is this. Division doesn't always come from obvious rebellion. Sometimes it begins with small decisions that move us away from what once held everything together. You don't need to track every king or remember every name to understand what's happening here. Just stay with the pattern. Stay with the way decisions shape direction over time. Stay with the reminder that what we center our lives around matters more than what we build on the outside. And that is where this part of the journey leaves us. Not with everything falling apart at once, but with the understanding that when the center is no longer steady, everything else begins to follow. As you move into the reading this week, remember, there's no rush. Read slowly, read a little at a time, or simply sit with the passages if that's what the week allows. Scripture doesn't ask us to perform, it invites us to remain. And everything connected to this journey lives in the show notes. It's all there in one place, so you don't have to go looking for it or go very far. And thank you for walking this long way through Scripture with me. And I'll meet you here again next week. Thank you, friend.